นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings. Good evening to everybody. Some familiar faces, some new faces to me. Maybe I'm new to you. But it's very pleasant to be here at Mahindarama, as we know, one of the oldest, most established temples in Penang. And a reminder that Penang has a long and very valued history of Buddhist practice and connection to the Buddhist religion. Literally hundreds of years, who knows, even thousands of years perhaps, have been Buddhists visiting or settling in Penang. So I think that's our good fortune, that we have we live in a peaceful city, and there's many Buddhist temples and centers, Sangha members and lay groups practicing the Dhamma. And even on higher planes, many teachers agree that Penang has very many good devas living in the island and protecting the island. So it's a suitable place for practicing the Dhamma, what we call Patirupa Desavasa. Nowadays there are many corners of the world where people practice Buddhism, practice the Dhamma, but as we know, there's plenty of conflict and difficulties living in the world. So if we live in a nice peaceful corner which has relatively few problems and conflicts, this is our good fortune. It's something I would say to remember, to reflect upon. And that's often something the Buddha encouraged us to do, is to recollect our good fortune that we have already achieved in our life, because it's a good starting point for understanding the deeper truths. As we know, the Buddha taught, sometimes he'd say, I teach suffering and the end of suffering. And this word suffering, we don't even like to think about it or talk about it, because suffering implies pain, difficulty. Nobody wants to suffer. But of course, the Buddha's teachings are helping us to overcome suffering and to prevent us from having further suffering. But actually, to deal with suffering, it's a good starting point is to appreciate all the good things you have already. Your good fortune. So like living in Penang, I would say you have good fortune because you have access to the Dhamma. You don't have too much pressure from society. The environment is fairly stable. There aren't a lot of natural disasters here, say. There's no conflict or not serious conflict at the moment. So there's many factors that are something to be happy about. And this is something to appreciate. And in all of your individual situation, I would imagine there's no one sitting here tonight who's homeless. Actually, there are some homeless people. That's one way they describe Buddhist monks, the homeless ones. So we are homeless. We don't have anything. We just have a robe and bowl. But you're not homeless, meaning you're not destitute. You're not really struggling. Even if you say, oh, I don't have much money at the moment, it's hard to pay the bills. Sure, many people might say that. But I would say when you go home tonight, you've got a bed to sleep in, a roof over your head, you have food in the fridge probably, because it's very hot here. I would assume you have a fridge. So You have food, you have the basics of life. So you're not struggling, even though perhaps things could be better, but you're not struggling. That's something to appreciate. The peaceful society you live in, I'm sure Penang has some problems, but they're not serious problems. You can be fairly relaxed here. People can get on well together, work together, live together fairly harmoniously. If you have good health, say you have good enough health to come here tonight, you may not be in perfect health, you may have some small issues bothering you, and we're all getting older, of course. But if you're in reasonable health, you're mobile enough to get here, that's another thing to appreciate, isn't it? You're healthy enough to come and listen to a Dhamma talk, to get out of your house, come here. That's something to be happy about, appreciate. The fact that you have ears, if you can still hear, or maybe we were with someone earlier today who is deaf, but they have a hearing aid that allows them to hear. That's their good fortune. Some of you are wearing spectacles, eyeglasses. That's your good fortune. You might think, oh, my eyesight's going. But if you have glasses, you can go to optometrist, get a prescription to improve your eyesight. And that's your good fortune. Something to be happy about. You're ill or you have some injury, you can go to the clinic or the hospital and get treatment. Even though the illness is inconvenient and sometimes painful, you can go to a hospital and get treatment. You can see doctors. You can even come to Mahindaram, go to the amateur clinic. This is our good fortune. So that's something the Buddha encouraged us to do, is to pause and consider the good fortune we've attained in our life and to wish for it to continue. The wish for others to have their good fortune and for that to continue, and the wish for ourselves to continue to have good fortune, good opportunities, the opportunity to listen to Dhamma, practice Dhamma, the good health, the good conditions to practice. This is something we've already achieved and we wish that it continues. In Buddhism we have a term for this, we call it mudita. Mudita for ourselves. And when you practice mudita, it means they translate it as appreciative joy, sympathetic joy, or happiness at the success of others. But you actually begin with yourself first. You have to recognize the happiness, the good things, the good fortune you've already achieved. If you're being honest, you have to notice that and appreciate that or recognize that. And then you see in other people's lives, you realize they also have a lot of good fortune, people around you. This is the opposite of when we have a very narrow-minded approach to life, or more selfish or wrong-sided, or we say wrong view, where you may only be focusing on what's wrong. This is wrong, that is wrong. I haven't got this is no good in my life. You know, the sort of thinking that makes you feel unhappy, sad, depressed, angry. Mudita is the opposite of that. It's the opposite of jealousy, but it's also the opposite of that kind of negative view of the world. So the Buddha encouraged us to practice mudita, appreciate what we have already. And some of you are coming on the meditation retreat tomorrow. You'll notice if you start there as your starting point when you meditate, any time that you meditate, whether you're on retreat or at home, doesn't matter. If your starting point is you are reflecting on the good fortune you've already achieved and attained in your life, to continue meditating with that frame of mind, that attitude, is much easier than if your starting point is the complaining mind. What's wrong? You know, like when you read the newspaper, this is wrong, that's wrong, the world is going wrong, Penang is wrong, and you know every fault with every person that you know, and your own faults as well, the faults of others. If that's your starting point, and if we're honest, quite often that's the way we think, it's very hard, isn't it, to meditate from there. It's like you've got a double weight to lift. Your mind is doubly heavy. If you were thinking of your mind as a material thing, it's like the weight of your mind is very heavy when you're only seeing negative things. Whereas when you appreciate your good fortune, your mind immediately feels lighter, happier. And so to meditate, starting there, it's easier. You feel more enthusiastic, more energetic, more willing to face some of the challenges, because of course meditation practice can be challenging, but you're ready to face, because you're starting from a place where you're appreciating the good you have, the good in yourself and the good in others. And this isn't to deny that we also have faults and problems and weaknesses, or the people around us also have their faults, and the society around us has faults and things that need to be improved. It's not to deny that or hide that or ignore that. It's simply recognizing the good first, starting there, focusing on that. You might say concentrating your mind on that, because it puts us in a good state of mind to then go further in our practice. Of course, as I said, often our habit is to think of the negative. We do that easily. My teacher Ajahn Kalyano noticed this. He said, human beings, their mind is just like water. If you pour water, from a bottle or a cup, it will always flow to the lowest point. So if it's in the room, it might flow to the door to go out the door. If it's in your yard or in the street, it'll flow downhill towards the lower point. That's what water does because of gravity. It'll always flow downhill. It'd be strange if it flowed uphill. It always flows downhill. Your mind is the same. If you don't train it, you don't practice, your mind tends to flow down to the lowest point, meaning to the more negative ways of thinking and looking at life. That's what the untrained human mind does, quite naturally, quite easily. We easily become irritated with life, look at things in a negative way, feel unhappy about ourselves, unhappy about the people around us, unhappy about Penang, Malaysia, the world. There's no end to it, is there? When you're caught in negativity, that's what you'll do. Keep thinking in that way. And it makes you unhappy, brings you down, brings your mind down. So, as I was saying at the beginning of a talk or the beginning of a meditation, or at times when you're bringing your mind to think of the teachings of the Buddha, this is a very good starting point, is to appreciate what you have already rather than what's wrong. They're very simple but different directions, aren't they? Rather than promoting what's wrong with life and thinking all about that and making yourself miserable, you ask yourself the question, what is right? What is good? What is my good fortune so far? And you'll have some that you quite often overlook, and that's the problem. If we don't do this, we don't consciously stop and think about the good fortune we've achieved, we'll miss it, and we'll miss a chance to uplift our mind and further develop our mind, because we're only seeing what's wrong, and that tends to drag the mind down and we'll feel unhappy. The fact you have faith in Buddhism, which brought you here tonight, you wouldn't be here. Nobody paid you to come here, or nobody forced you to come here, I don't think. Mahindaram didn't send a bus out to kind of grab you off the street and bring you in here. You're here because you want to be here, you have faith. And faith is like that, it's a positive energy that brings you to do good things, such as coming to the temple to listen to a talk, meditate, participate in good events, skillful events. That comes from your faith. So having faith in a good things like the Buddhist teachings, in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, is also your good fortune. Some people are very lucky, they have it from birth. Mum and dad brought them up to respect the Buddha, to love the Buddha, to listen to the Buddhist teachings and try to practice them. Other people come to Buddhism later in life, like myself and many others. You know, the first part of my life, I didn't even know the Buddha or who the Buddha was. But later, as I became interested in religion and that side of life, I started studying, reading, studying, and the Buddha I found to be the wisest, most compassionate teacher I could find out about in the world, just from books, mostly from books. This was pre-internet days. The Buddha, out of curiosity, I studied, learned what the Buddha had to say, listened to what the Buddha had to say, read about it. And everything I found that the Buddha had to say was very inspiring for me. So it's very easy for me to say, I follow the Buddha, I'm a Buddhist, without any hesitation. Other religions, other things that people follow in the world, none of it appealed to me at all for some reason, but Buddhism did. So straight away I could say, I want to follow the Buddha, I want to practice what the Buddha taught. Meditation, dana, sila, reflecting on the teachings, listening to the teachings, every aspect of Buddhism I was content with, I was happy with, and I realized this is my good fortune to have encountered the Buddhist teachings. I was lucky. When you feel like that, that's coming from the faith that has come up in your heart, and it brings you a very positive energy to then go on and practice. You know, why can you offer dana and support charity and help other people in the world? Well, partly it's because you have faith that it's a worthwhile activity. Maybe you've already seen for yourself practicing dana, it brings you happiness, brings happiness to others, it does something that's very beneficial for society. Maybe you've already seen that. Or because of your faith you try it at least. Even the practice of dana, some people hesitate, don't they? They say, oh, is it worth it? You know, is it worth helping other people? I don't feel I can do very much. You know, they have self-doubt sometimes. Or they feel, I've got nothing to offer, I've got no money, no time, nothing I can do. So they have self-doubt, or they feel they just don't have the right situation. You know, people say, oh, I've got no merit, I can't go and offer dana to monks, or I can't help do charity, or I can't help someone. Maybe you feel, I've got no time, I'm too busy with my work, or bringing up my kids, I've got no time to do any kind of dana. We have all these different ways of thinking about it, and sometimes that blocks us, stops us. But when you have faith come up, then maybe you overcome some of those obstacles. You say, well, I'll try anyway, I'll do what I can. And you overcome some of the obstacles, partly just through faith. The Buddha said this is a useful thing to do because it helps us let go of some of our attachment, generates good feeling with other people. Many good things come from the dana we do in society. Could be just helping one single person or helping many, but good things arise and you see that, so your faith arises, you say, well, I'm going to do it, I'm going to try. And really nobody is in a situation where they can't practice dana. You may not have a lot to share or give, but if you have the attitude to share, to give, to help, this is dana. That's what the word means, giving or sharing. It could be the smallest little thing. You just give someone some words of encouragement who's, you know, somebody's just fallen over by accident and you help pick them up and you say, oh, you dust them down and you say, I hope you're okay. That's dana, practice of kindness between human beings. Or you make a, you know, obviously there's many kinds of dana we do. We offer donations, we do charity, we offer food, we do many things, of course. But the important thing is to see when you have faith, then you put it into practice, and that may mean doing some dana and overcoming your own doubts, hesitation. I often quote the story from Thailand about the beggar who even did dana. And mostly you think of a beggar as somebody who has nothing. How could they practice dana? And this is a man who lived in a little tin shack, had no real wealth to his name. The tin shack was on a piece of land that he didn't own, public land, and there's a little shanty town, a few people living together with no real facilities, no toilet and no running water, but he just had a few pieces of tin to shade him from the sun and the rain. And in the daytime, his job was to go and sit in the corner of one of the big temples in Bangkok. And he had his little tin, and he'd sit there, skinny, just wearing rag clothes, skinny, dirty, puts his tin down and he's collecting money. Just sits there all day collecting money. That's his income. Whatever he can get, whatever people share, they offer dana, as it were. They share their dana with him, but that's his collection. That's what he can use to buy food and look after himself. So he did that for years and years. And then in that temple, like Mahindaram and many other temples, they had quite a few big buildings. And one of the big buildings, the meditation hall, was being pulled down because it was old and falling apart. They had to rebuild it. So they started a project to rebuild the temple, raise funds, pull the old building down, start building the new, and then raising funds, had different fundraising events, projects, and people would come every day to offer food and money and everything. And this beggar is just sitting there watching everything go on. He knows people around there, he knows the monks, know the people, but all he does is sit there watching every day because he's a beggar, nothing else to do. And over time, he saw people going in and out of the other main hall where the monks sit and have their meal, and people go and offer money to help rebuild the big meditation hall. And is getting close to being finished. And then one day at the mealtime, all the monks are sitting there, and people bring food in and other offerings offered to the monks give a blessing, and then the beggar, this guy, skinny old guy, comes into the hall where the monks are with this dirty old plastic bag. And he brings it in, he bows, and he puts it down in front of the abbot, the high chief monk, puts it down. Chief monk says, "What are you doing here?" He knows he's the beggar from the corner of the temple. He said, "What are you doing here? What's this?" And the beggar says, "Today I want to make an offering towards the rebuilding of the meditation hall. Now it's my turn." He said, "For many years, the last few years, I've seen people come to make offerings. I see them make their offering, go out, and they're all glowing, very happy. Today is my turn." And he offers this bag, dirty old plastic bag, and the monk opens it up and looks inside, full of money, mainly coins, full of money. So he calls over the temple steward, and they start counting it, and they count it out. Ends up 1 million baht, which is a lot of money. Even in Penang, that's a lot of money. And the monks are astounded. They said, "How did you do this? Where did you get this from?" They thought, maybe some people thought, first of all, maybe he robbed something. They couldn't believe this is his money. He said, "No, it's all mine. I've saved this." They said, "How do you do that?" He said, "Well, every day people give me money, but I only need a little bit to survive." He lives very simply. Doesn't have to pay bills. Maybe there's something in it. Just pays for food mainly and whatever minimal things he uses. And the rest I've saved. Over many years I've saved. This is my savings. And the abbot says, "Maybe you want to keep it. You've got nothing. Maybe you need this." He said, No, I want to make dana offering today." And the abbot says, "Why?" He says, "Because I see these people every day offering dana, and I'm just sitting there." So it's almost like he's in a temple. He's almost like meditating. It's just a fly on the wall, the beggar in the corner. He's just watching every day, sees what's going on. He said, most people are very busy. They don't see what's going on, but I do. And he sees all these people going in, making their offerings, coming out. Face is radiant, happy. He says, I want some of that. That's what I want. So today I'm giving this offering, and the monks blessed him, and he came out radiant. He got what he wanted. And literally that's why we do dana, practice dana, because it uplifts us. You let go of something, and if you're a beggar and you let go of 1 million baht, that's not a small thing. That's like, you really have to think twice about doing that. It's not easy. So what he's done is a very great thing. He's got little, but he gives a lot. Some people have a lot and they give a little. Some people have a lot, give a lot. Some people have little, give a little. Some people have little and give a lot. But he gave a lot. But it's a very good illustration of why would people give to others, to a good cause. He obviously felt that was a worthwhile cause, this temple. He had gratitude because he'd spent his whole life begging in this temple. So he had gratitude to the place, the people. But he also wanted to make his own offering, contribute for himself. And dana is like that. It's okay to see other people do dana and be happy for them, and that is one kind of happiness. But it's not as powerful as doing your own, is it? Making your own effort. We all know the stories about the people who have been too busy to do the dana, so they send someone else off to do it. So they're still offering dana, but they're not doing it themselves directly. They send their friend or their servant or somebody else to go and do it. Nowadays, maybe just send Uber to do it, Uber dana. So it's still dana, but you don't feel the same if it's just Uber going off. Maybe the Uber driver gets enlightened, I don't know. But you're going to get a bit less because you're not seeing it, you're not participating perhaps. And that's the way our society goes. Even Buddhists are going this way. It's like, the online donation, the Uber driver offering the food, sending other people to do it. Maybe if we don't do it ourselves, we don't get so much back. So every aspect of the Buddhist path is helping us to improve, to uplift the mind. So doing it yourself and doing the kind of dana that means you have to actually put forth some effort is the real dana. We have to try, and you may hesitate, you may doubt, you may be not sure whether it's worth it, you may feel lazy, you may say, I've got something else to do. But when you make yourself do it, how do you feel after? You get some radiance, don't you? You feel happy. I did that. I finally did it. I did my bit. I made my effort. And you let go of something, don't you? Let go of your stubbornness, your resistance. Let go of your stinginess. You let go of many things when you do dana, even if it's just offering some rice to a monk, or you go out and do some charity, or you help somebody. It doesn't matter. If you make yourself do it when you don't want to do it, that's the best kind of dana, isn't it? Like the Buddha also said, maybe there's someone you don't really like. The best way to deal with someone you don't really like, who you're angry with or don't like, is to do some dana with them. Go and help them. Because they're the last person you want to help. But if you make yourself help them, you're going to let go of a lot of your attachment, your ego, your pride, your anger, all these negative qualities. You'll let go when you go and help them. And it could be an animal. I was saying earlier, someone sent me a picture of a cockroach in their house. We can practice abhaya dana with cockroaches, the dana of giving safety and forgiveness. Even a cockroach, you say, I hate you, cockroach, and maybe part of you just wants to squash it, kill it, don't want any more cockroaches. But you say, today I'm going to give you the gift of life and safety. You walk at your will through my bedroom. And I'll just grit my teeth and I'll practice metta and forgiveness for the cockroach. But that's still dana, isn't it? Could be a person, could be an animal, could be anything. Could be yourself. Sometimes we can't forgive ourselves, so we keep getting angry and upset because we haven't let go of something we're holding on to with ourselves. Our own mistakes from 10 years ago or 20 years ago. When you look at your life, sometimes you say, oh, I'm a failure, my life is no good. And people do hold on to a lot of grudges against themselves. So we also need to forgive and let go there. This is another kind of dana. But dana comes from having faith. So faith is not a small thing. Once you have faith, you're willing to practice, you're willing to push yourself, to try, to help to go a bit further with your practice, with dana. And then with sila, it's the same. Keeping precepts is not always easy, is it? To watch what you say, watch what you do. Again, go back to the cockroach. You see the cockroach, your first impulse may be, poor cockroach, or get a spray out or something. Now, somebody came and told me the other day, they say, oh, nowadays, if you have trouble, we live in the forest, so sometimes in our kitchen we get mice coming in. And we usually just catch them in a little cage without killing them and then release them. They said, oh, now you can get a new kind of thing to stop mice coming in. It's this thing, it makes a sound and it makes the mice go crazy and hurts their brain and they won't come in. And I said, no, we won't need that, thank you. We'll carry on just catching them. It's bad enough to catch them in a cage. Hopefully it doesn't hurt them, but I don't want to scramble their brains. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. Keeping precepts is like that. If you are going to keep precepts, sometimes you're tempted to not follow the precepts, aren't you? You're tempted to kill the pest. Sometimes you're tempted to take something that doesn't belong to you, maybe because you can. Maybe somebody else hasn't realized. It could be like someone was telling me the other day, they bought a piece of land and they didn't realize until they got there that the neighbor, their land, encroached a little bit on the neighboring property, and the previous owner that they bought from had built a fence and a shed on the neighbor's property. And they're thinking, should I tell them or not? Should I be honest and re-establish the property line, which is the honest thing to do, or should I just stay quiet and so I got a bit of extra land? That would be stealing, wouldn't it? The mind of a thief, if you're going to not tell them the truth and carry on keeping someone else's land for yourself. It's kind of stealing, isn't it? And so I discussed this with them. They said, yeah, I wouldn't feel good about that. Okay. Often with the precepts, you understand precepts when you think how you would feel in the other person's shoes, don't you? If you were the cockroach and someone squashed you, you wouldn't like it. If your neighbor took your land and then you found out about it, you wouldn't be happy, would you? You'd want justice and you want to have a proper boundary, the correct boundary, according to the map, according to what everyone's paid for. You would want that. You wouldn't want them stealing your land. If if someone else is rude to you with their words, you don't feel happy about it. You're angry. So other people will also feel like that if you are rude to them. Everything is like that, isn't it? This is how the Buddha encouraged us to understand sila. You put your heart in their heart, or you put yourself in their shoes. It's a sort of modern way of saying it. Could be driving. You drive and someone else wants to come in front of you and you're no, and you're getting very angry with this other driver. And maybe you wave your fist or you don't let them in and you're acting in a bit aggressively. If you were in their position, you probably wouldn't be very happy, and they're probably not happy with you. This is how you understand sila. You imagine yourself in their situation, in their shoes. How would you feel if you were them? Whether it's your words, your actions. It's not the only way to consider sila, but we have to learn this, don't we? By learning to reflect or understand our own behavior and how it affects the people around us. And to do that, you need some faith. You need to have a belief, a faith in the Buddha. The Buddha encouraged us to be strong, not give in to our more selfish desires, our anger, our fears. Because often we break precepts out of fear, don't we? We're afraid someone will get something, get ahead of us, or get something, or have power over us, or do something to hurt us. So some people say the best form of defense is attack. So you find a way to attack them before they attack you. No names mentioned, but there are various countries in the world who are using this as their justification for war. They said they might attack us, so we better attack them. But individuals do it as well, don't we? We think, this guy, I don't trust him, So already we're thinking of attacking the person, and they haven't done anything. We just do it with our words. We do that, don't we? But you have to put yourself in their shoes, and you have to be strong, and sometimes you have to say, well, I don't understand that person yet. I don't know whether I can trust them or not, but I'm not going to attack them or be aggressive or hurt them in any way, because if I was them, that would be suffering for me. So if I do it to them, they're going to suffer, just as I wouldn't want someone doing that to me. We have to learn this, how to restrain our worst behavior. You might have the thought come up, but you say, no, I won't do this. I won't say those words, or I won't do that thing. You see this in the workplace, any kind of workplace, there'll always be a little bit of rivalries. Unfortunately, you sometimes even see it in Buddhist communities, temples and committees and groups of Buddhists. Sometimes they have, you've got to damage someone else's reputation first before they damage yours. So you're already telling everyone how bad this person is. Oh, do you know what they did, what they said? What we call gossip. We use gossip as a kind of weapon sometimes, don't we? But imagine if you're the subject of someone else's gossip, you're not happy, you don't like it. Why would someone else gossip about us? Probably because we've done it before. That's karma, isn't it? What we send out comes back to us. If we're sending out good things, you speak kindly about other people, praise them, talk about their good qualities, that's a whole different kind of karma, isn't it? But if you're careless with your speech and you're sending out anger, negativity, jealousy, rivalry, it's different. So the Buddha encouraged us to think about our behavior and how it affects other people, what comes back to us, what we give out. And why not give out the good things? Speak nicely, kindly, forgive others their faults, and talk about their good qualities. Everyone has some good qualities to them. Maybe we can look more closely, more carefully at someone who we don't like, and we say, maybe they actually have some good qualities. And we focus on that, and then our anger or dislike starts to go down, doesn't it? If you're only seeing the good in someone, after a while you don't think about their criticizing them or trying to attack them in any way. You can get on better, can't you? You can cooperate. So we have to learn how to do this, not to just focus on what's wrong in someone else or ourselves. We have to train ourselves. It's a kind of training, isn't it? A practice. This is sila. This is how we learn to be more restrained, more careful. And in the end, it doesn't matter, even if you meet someone or you know someone who's a little bit unrestrained, careless in their behavior, act in bad ways, well, you can be careful with them, but you don't have to attack them. You don't have to hurt them. You just know how they are. If you know how someone is, well, maybe you can just carefully manage your relationship with them. You don't have to spend so much time with them. When you are with them, you're careful because you know they're a little bit volatile or unreliable in some way. You know how they are, but you don't have to attack them or hurt them or criticize them. You just know what they're like. Many things are like that, aren't they? Like, we live in the forest, monks, we live in the forest. There's always a few poisonous snakes in the forest. You meet a poisonous snake, it could kill you, it could hurt you. But nobody's ever been killed in our monastery. You just know if you meet the poisonous snake, you walk around it. Or you stop, consider where the snake is going and go in the other direction. Or You're just careful when you meet the snake. And you can let the snake do his thing and you do your thing, and you can actually live in the same place with no problem if you're careful and you treat it properly. But imagine if you meet the snake and straight away you're going, "Oh, snake, you're terrible. I hate you. You're the most ugly snake. Oh, you're such a bad snake. Did you hear what this snake did?" And you tell your friend, gossiping about the snake and how bad it is. Sooner or later the snake will get a bit upset, I think, and then you're risking a lot, because snake gets angry with you, maybe it will chase you and bite you. People are much the same. You may know someone is not the best person, they have weaknesses, faults, but if you spend all your time telling everyone how bad they are and criticizing them and finding ways to get at them, it wouldn't be surprising if after a while they get angry with you and try and hurt you. Just the same as a snake. So a lot of people in life, you have to learn how to carefully live with them, but you don't have to actually hurt them or do anything to them. You just walk around them, or be careful when they're there, and you can still carry on with your life. Precepts are a bit like that. People are always asking, they say, "Oh, how can you keep the 5 precepts when everyone around you doesn't? I go to work, everyone drinks, everyone tells lies, everyone is trying to steal some money if they can," and all these things. You hear this all the time. But that's them, that's other people. And they're going to have to be responsible for their actions and what they do. But we don't have to imitate them. We can still do what we understand is right, correct. And if you want some support, you come here. Say, if you're trying to give up drinking, you come here and you meet a lot of people who don't drink. If you're trying to not steal anything, and maybe you've had that in the past, you've stolen something and you don't want to do this anymore, come here. If you want to learn not to be rude to other people or tell lies, you come to a place where people practice and you get reinforced in your precepts. So we have to be smart as well. If you want to keep precepts, you have to associate with other people who keep precepts, and it will help you. That takes a bit of thought and effort. You can't just blame other people and say, "Oh, I tell lies because everyone around me tells lies." Maybe that means you're not seeking out people who don't lie. You have to try a bit, make a bit of effort. Just like dana, keeping precepts, morality, you have to make some effort. I know one family, they said they're always going to social events where people tend to drink, and they don't like it because they're Buddhists. So they said, "We're not going to drink." The husband and wife said, "We're not going to drink alcohol. We just go, participate, be friendly, but we're not going to drink alcohol." So they sort of spend the night in one corner. Everyone else is drinking, getting a bit tipsy, even drunk over there. And they mix a little bit, but not so much because they're not drinking alcohol. But then they found that there was 2 other families who don't drink. So all the families who don't drink started to congregate together and spend time together. And they're very friendly and happy, smooth, very pleasant evening. And they noticed all the families over there who are drinking alcohol, after a while, there's some arguments, some poor behavior, some not so nice things were said. When they've been to a few events like this, they realize, "Oh, we're much better off not drinking." And then they got reinforced or supported by those other families who don't drink alcohol, and then after a while it's very easy. You just spend more time with the people who don't drink, and then it's easy to give it up. We have to try this sometimes as well. If you have a particular bad habit that you want to end, give up, then you have to find people who are also giving it up or have given it up, whether it's drinking or gambling or fighting and arguing. If you want to give up arguing, then spend time with people who don't argue very much. This will help. If you argue a lot and then you're spending time with other people who argue a lot, well, that's going to be what goes on. Sometimes it's very sad. Sometimes kids come to me and say, how's life? They say, "Oh, everything's fine except for mum and dad. They argue all the time." I said, why do they argue all the time? They said that they still haven't worked it out. Sometimes mum starts, sometimes dad starts. They just love to argue. But it's sad for the kids because they've got to live with them. The kids say, I don't like it. Who likes arguing? So sometimes we have to make an effort, go out of what we're used to maybe, make an effort, spend more time with people who don't argue if that's your weakness. So you have to get to know yourself, and the precepts help you there. They start to highlight where you need to improve your behavior, what you say, what you do, because it matters. It affects ourselves and it affects other people. If you practice meditation, then you immediately will understand the value of precepts. If you practice meditation, when you break the precepts, it will come up in your mind, in your meditation. You'll see what you've been up to. You can't escape yourself. It's like Ajahn Chah, my teacher, used to say, if you break the precepts, often you'll do it with a kind of a look around. Does anyone see what I'm doing? Or does anyone hearing what I'm saying? Check. You kind of have that kind of mindset. You're looking around for others. But then you're there. He said, you're always there, witnessing what you do, even if other people don't. If you do something not very good, you know, you remember. That's the important thing, more important than other people knowing what you've done. Because you remember, so say later on you go and meditate, up it will pop. If you went chasing after the cockroach, when you come to meditate, that's what will come up. I gave in to my anger, I killed the cockroach, I shouldn't have done that. You'll remember it. Sometimes people have very clear visions of making those mistakes. They come up and they remember and they feel bad, cry a bit or feel unhappy. Things you've said you tend to remember. If you have an argument with someone and then you meditate, it's going to come up. What she said, what I said, it should have been... You kind of relive it in your mind generally because it's quite strong karma, isn't it? When you argue with someone, it makes an impression on your mind. So if you ever come to sit meditation, up it will come. It's like a replay. Sometimes visuals, sometimes just the words, you remember the words, sometimes the feeling, the emotion, it comes up again. Often we just have to live through that, work through that until we've understood, and then we can maybe let it go. And then hopefully you say, I'm not going to do that again, because you see the suffering of it. So precepts will help you in your meditation because you start to see the relationship between what you say, what you do, how it affects your mind every day. And you'll start to not want to have arguments or get drunk or tell lies or whatever it is that is your weakness. As you meditate, you'll notice things and you want to change. This is why the astrologers are scared of meditation, people who meditate. Because they love to tell you what's going to happen and how you're going to behave, and it's all like this. As soon as you meditate, you'll start opening your mind up to learning very quickly. Maybe you can change how you react to a situation. You can change how you treat someone. Maybe the astrologer says, this year you're going to have trouble with your brother or your sister. You're going to have arguments over money, and you're going to have this problem and that problem, and you're going to have all kinds of problems. They love to say this. Bad year for you, year of the fire horse. So many problems. They'll tell you all this, but what they don't like is someone who meditates, who may be sitting there going, I've got to be more mindful when I talk to my brother, my sister, not give in to that anger, not fight them. Maybe I'll be more forgiving, try to use more kindness and compassion, more understanding, and then you can get a totally different outcome, and all your astrological chart changes very quickly. And what they were telling you, you're going to have a bad year and turn into a good year. If you can catch some of your bad habits, and as you meditate, you notice them, you make a new aspiration or intention for yourself. I'm not going to argue with my sister, my brother, my husband, my wife, my friend, whoever. I'm going to work hard to treat them better or be more careful what I say. keep the precepts more, be more mindful, whatever it is that you need to change. Once you're meditating, you can decide on that because you'll see the problem. And then the astrologer is in trouble. All those predictions start to crumble a bit because you're now different. Maybe you meet with the problem, and the astrologer thinks you're just going to get upset and depressed, and everything's going to be bad. And you say, no, I'm going to meet this problem with Dhamma. So like the beggar, you might say the beggar is having bad. The stars are not aligning for him. Life is not good, having to beg, no income, lots of problems, lots of suffering. But he met his problems in a very good way by practicing dana in a situation no one would expect him to practice dana. But he just saw that this is a way to gain happiness, and he did. He achieved that. You can change once you understand your mind and you understand the Dhamma better. Maybe you can do the complete opposite of what the astrologer or anyone else is telling you is going to happen. You're going to be angry, but you can actually forgive and let go of your anger and treat someone much better than predicted. You can overcome difficulties if you apply the Dhamma. Maybe you're going to fall ill. You're going to fall ill and everything's going to fall apart. You're going to have a car accident or this and that. Your business is going to crumble and all these things. Maybe your business is going to crumble and you just work harder and you try harder and you treat people better and you get things going better, and maybe your business doesn't crumble. Or you fall ill, but you keep a good attitude and learn things from your illness, and you keep your mind in a very happy space, even when you get ill or have an accident. We can change our karma every day, in every situation, and we use the Dhamma for that. And there's always some remedy for our problem. If you're feeling very depressed, there's things you can reflect on and bring up in your mind. You can practice mindfulness and recognize where your depression is coming from. Maybe you're holding on to very negative thoughts. You say, time to be a bit more relaxed. Send more loving kindness to myself, more loving kindness to the people around me. Appreciate the good in myself, appreciate the good in others more. Maybe not take everything so personally or seriously and just not hold on to those negative thoughts so much. You can do that, especially when you meditate and you start to see what you're doing in your mind, the habits of your mind. That's what you learn in meditation. You recognize certain patterns, certain habits that are coming up, and then you can start changing them for the better. If your habit is always to see the bad in yourself or the bad in other people, once you meditate, you'll notice that. You may say, I've got to stop doing this. Now it's time to be more tolerant, more relaxed to others, more friendly, more helpful, more kind. Maybe just on the level of the way you look at them, but maybe also in the way you act and speak as well. Or maybe there's things you have to accept that you haven't accepted so far. So, obvious one, like everyone's getting older. You have to accept, as a human being, you're going to get older every day. And as you get older, the body doesn't work so well. So just accepting impermanence, changing conditions. Rather than complaining or fighting it, just say, I have to accept this. And learning to adjust your expectations about your health, your body, because you're getting older. Or nowadays, because of the economy is being affected by global conflicts and things. The price of things is going up, skyrocketing. And you can sit there complaining all day and being miserable and blaming politicians and other people. Or you can just adjust to the fact the economy is not under my control. We can't control it. We just do the best we can. So if the price of things is going up, you say, this is a good opportunity to practice being careful with my money. Spend a bit less, save a bit more. Only buy necessary things and not waste my money on unnecessary things. There's lots of things we do in life where we spend money that we don't really need to, so maybe I need to readjust, think about it. I can learn to be more disciplined with my money, more frugal, more economical. These are good qualities. So we say turn the crisis into success, opportunity. So if the economy is not good, inflation is going up, prices are going up, learn to be able to live a bit more simply, reduce your spending. In the end, maybe you have more freedom that way. You're not a slave to always having to buy things and spend all this money. Maybe you start to feel more independent from those kind of desires. You have more freedom. Whether you spend or not, you're able to control that better. I knew one family, they had to go out for food every night. Never cook at home. That was their rule. We don't cook at home. And maybe in Penang there's a lot of cheap food, but in Australia, if you go out to eat every night, it's quite expensive. You buy Malaysian Penang style food in Australia, it's very expensive. 10 times higher just for a bowl of chicken noodles and chicken rice or something. It's going to cost you 10 times much in Melbourne. So if you go out to eat every night, your money is finished very quickly. So you have to learn maybe not go out so much. So for them, at first it was a pride thing. They said, no, we've been going out to eat every night for many years, parents and kids. We eat out, that's who we are, that's what we do. But suddenly the price of everything has gone skyrocketing. It's like, maybe it's time to start staying in, cooking at home, save some money. All you have to do is let go of a little bit of your ego, your pride that was identifying with being able to go out every night. And then maybe you actually feel better. You feel, it's quite nice staying in. It's not so tiring, driving somewhere, choosing the restaurant, going out all the time. It's quite pleasant to stay in and cook at home and cook for yourself. If you can change your attitude when there are changes in society or the economy or your health or something in life, it doesn't have to bring you suffering. You just have to learn how to adapt and think of it in the correct way and not get angry, not spend all your day blaming people because you can't eat out anymore. Just say, it's an opportunity to learn to cook. Maybe you've never learned to cook before. Now you can start learning cooking. A few years ago in Thailand, there were some floods, very bad floods in some parts of central Thailand, and lots of people's houses were completely underwater, factories, roads, everything. And it was really a difficult time for hundreds of thousands of people. And one monk I knew, I said, how are you coping with the floods? He said, it's all right. His monastery is on a hill, so they were above the floods. But of course, they get their food from all the people down below in the plain, and their houses are all underwater. So I said, how are you coping? He said, this flood is really good. I've learned how to row a boat. New skills. So he said, I became very good at paddling a canoe, going around. First of all, they just go around to collect food because the monks have to survive, and they didn't want to put people to trouble, so they take their canoe, their boat, go to people's houses, collect enough food, and they said, we just collect enough food to eat because people are struggling. Then, because people are very generous in Thailand, like Penang, they kept offering more food than the monks need, and people thought the monks may not be able to come out, so we'll give them some sacks of rice and veggie and different tins and fish and stuff. So then the monks said, we've got all this food. So then the monks and the volunteers started cooking. And they said, now we know how to row boats. So they're going out giving food back to the people, going to house every day. Usually in the old days we call it meal on wheels. And now it's meal on boat. And so the monks were going delivering food every day. And they said, it's quite fun. You learn to paddle, and you learn to keep your boat steady because you can't tip, the food will fall out. And you learn to be really good with your boat, and you help people. He said, the flood was hard, but you could enjoy it. You learn new things. life is like that. If you know how to adapt to the suffering that you encounter, it doesn't have to be kind of all-encompassing and ruin everything. It may just be a challenge that you have to learn how to deal with and overcome. It makes you smarter. If you have a problem, part of meditation is using wisdom, using intelligence to solve the problem, solve the challenge or the suffering. So it makes you smarter if you meditate. If you are angry, if you can apply your intelligence, say, why am I angry? What can I do about it? Oh, I can forgive, I can let go, I can accept something that's hard to accept. And then my mind is free and happy. Why not? And you learn something, don't you? Or if you have a real bad habit, an addiction, you're sort of addicted to something, like some people, one lady was addicted to gambling and she built up huge debts. This is in Australia, like tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And she's just weighed down by the debt. She came to me, I said, you could do so much more with that money. If you didn't gamble, all that money you could have done so much good for other people. Why don't you quit gambling, start putting your money, obviously got to pay off your debt, but you also could put your money into doing things to help other people. So far she has. She's learned to do that. And I said, what's it like? She said, well, gambling really gives me a buzz, but I do get happy from helping other people. So she's carrying on. She's quit the gambling, using money to help other people do charity, do other different kinds of charity. That's wisdom in Buddhism, where you have some problem, suffering, but you apply your mind. Sometimes you apply a teaching from the Buddha, or you just think about it yourself and you change your behavior, do something better, and you feel better for it. You reduce your suffering. This is what we learn in meditation, learning to pay attention, bring the mind to calm, and then you see what your suffering is and what you need to do about it. A lot of our suffering, all you need to do is just let it go. Just stop thinking in that way, put it down, let it go. Sometimes you actually have to think a bit more, don't you? You have to really understand where this suffering is coming from, what to do. It may take a bit of time and effort. But you get that time and that effort when you start meditating, because you're starting to watch your mind. Another common one is people are often carrying around suffering from earlier in their life. It's always there in the back of their mind. Whenever the situation is right, and they sit down, they start crying, or they get very upset. Something that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when they were a child. And they've been carrying around a lot of guilt, or just anger, or just unhappiness based on some past event, or some relationship that went wrong, or something that happened maybe over a long time. But they've been carrying it around, and they haven't really addressed it, they haven't sorted it out in their mind, so it keeps causing them suffering over and over again. Keep feeling guilty, keep feeling sad, angry. But when they come to meditate, they notice more clearly, oh yes, this is something it's been affecting me for a long time now. Sometimes it's just pain. Certain thoughts bring pain, physical pain, headaches, chest pains. When they meditate, they notice this and say, I really need to let go. I need to change the way I'm thinking because I'm holding on to this. When you're guilty about something, maybe you're guilty about something bad that happened, something somebody did to you or something you did to somebody else. And that guilt, you just keep carrying around, feeling bad and unhappy about yourself. Once you meditate, maybe you have to start calming down and looking at that and say, if I keep reacting in the same old way, I'm going to keep suffering over and over again. Maybe it's time to put this down. Acknowledge it, of course. You know what's happened. You know why you think like you do. But then let it go. Move on. There's no point suffering over things that happened in the past. This is why the Buddha said, don't carry the past around like a burden, because it's just endless suffering that you might say unnecessary suffering. If something's happened before, you can't change it. You can't fix the past. You can learn from it and put it down, but you can't fix it or change it. So it's time to let it go. And the Buddha said, focus your mind on the present moment. And that's what you learn from meditation. Focus on the present moment, practice mindfulness, and then reflect on where the suffering is coming from, what you need to do. So starting from that point that we have good fortune, we're Buddhists, we have faith in the Buddha, we have opportunity to practice, we have places to practice, we're living in a good society, we have reasonable health. Starting from this point of recognizing the good fortune we have, then once you have faith in the Buddha and his teachings, then putting it into practice. Practicing dana, keeping the sila, learning to meditate, learning to improve your state of mind, let go of the suffering in your mind. This is what the Buddha taught. This is the Buddhist path. So I probably talked for quite a long time, so maybe I'll just say this much for now. But before we finish, there'll be a chance if anyone has any questions. I'll do my best.